U.S. Senate candidate Graham Plattner is facing a new allegation from a woman who says he forced her to have sex with him nearly 5 years ago, despite repeated objections. 41-year-old Maine resident Jenny Rassicot shared the alleged incident with Politico in 3 interviews over 2 weeks. Politico spoke to someone the woman dated and confided in, reviewed documents including therapist notes and messages between the accuser and someone she warned about Plattner before he ran for office. Plattner responded in a statement saying these allegations are troubling, serious, and false. Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically untrue. Let's bring in MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell, Luke Russert, Charles Blow still with us as well. Michael, what else is contained in this Politico exclusive?
Yeah, so this is, as you mentioned, the broad strokes of the allegations here. Politico reporting that Graham Plattner had met this woman on Bumble, a dating app, in 2019, and this alleged sexual assault took place in 2021. She recounts to Politico, and Politico reports this afternoon that that Graham Plattner had wanted to come over and to see her. She had said no, that she wasn't in the mood, but then he let himself into her apartment, walked upstairs and found her sitting on a couch. He then went on top of her on that couch, and she said no. She asked that he remove himself and that he stop. She also mentions that he smelled of alcohol. She then tried to separate herself from in a different room, walking into her bedroom. At that point, Graham Plattner had followed her into the bedroom, and at that point she said that he forced her to have sex against her will. She then says that afterwards she went to the bathroom, returned to her bedroom, and Graham Plattner had been sleeping. She believed that he was very inebriated at that point. And then the next morning he had said that he did not remember what had happened, and she had asked him to leave, and she hadn't seen him since. So, again, we're still poring over these allegations. Important to note that Graham Plattner is denying this, but certainly the latest shoe to drop as we talk about his candidacy and himself as a candidate.
What has been the feeling on Capitol Hill about his candidacy? I mean, he is now the primary winner in Maine. He's going up against Susan Collins. I think he leads her by a couple of points in the most recent Maine polling. Is this going to change the way that Democrats on Capitol Hill, maybe Speaker Jeffries or Minority Leader Schumer, talk about him?
I think that first off, it's going to be we're going to be paying close attention to Graham Plattner.
Leader Jeffries.
Yes, he has said that he denies these allegations, but a key date we're watching is July 13th. According to Maine law, a candidate has up until the second Monday of July, so that being July 13th, 1 month from today, where they can drop out, and then the party can nominate somebody else to be the standard bearer for that election. Janet Mills, notably, is still on the ballot in that primary just last month or just recently. She had gotten about almost 20% of the vote. Graham Plattner with 70% of the vote, a little over 70%. A lot of folks, I think, wondering to see if Graham Plattner maybe takes himself out of this race, opening up a lane for somebody else. The sentiment on Capitol Hill was that Republicans were nervous that there were going to be more shoes to be dropped. And this was a concern that as this speculation had swirled, Graham Plattner came up to Capitol Hill and met with a number of Democrats. And there's reporting that he assured them that there was no more reporting to come out about his past, about his history. Obviously, that is not true, as we now have this Politico article. The sentiment that I was hearing was that Democrats didn't see him as the perfect candidate, that there were these concerns about these indiscretions and these poor reports. But at the end of the day, Maine is such an important pickup opportunity for them, and he was their candidate, so they were letting it go by the wayside. But certainly, I mean, this is very damning reporting right now, an instance of sexual assault. So we're going to have to listen closely to see if that changes any minds.
Luke, what do you make of this?
Well, I think something that jumped out to me in the article, which I just read, is that the person who made the accusations was very conflicted about coming forward. And primarily because she said she very much supported Plattner's politics and believed in his messaging and didn't want to hurt him politically, but also felt it necessary to see the full scope of the person. And I think that's something that is going to have to be wrestled with. If these allegations are true to this extent, I don't see how he can be the nominee for senator in Maine for the Democratic Party. I think there's a lot of people who might look at this at the gate and say, well, Ken Paxton in Texas is terrible, and the Republicans are putting him up, and he is someone who's had all sorts of legal issues and infidelity issues, et cetera. I think what you have here, though, is a pickup opportunity. Is incredibly important in Maine for the party. They want to get control of the Senate, but also somebody who there was a belief that he may have gotten through the storm on this, but now it's looking that it's significantly worse than what was advertised. And especially for a party that was so intertwined with Me Too and believing women, it looks very hypocritical if there is not, I think, a real examination of him moving forward.
Charles?
Well, the first thing I always want to say in situations like this is that sounds horrible, and we deserve to hear her more of her case. If she wants to pursue other actions, I think she should be encouraged to do that, and we should wait to hear more of her case. But the second thing I want to say is that we continue to have a situation where Democrats and Republicans are playing by completely separate rule books. The idea that this would push him out of the race, maybe that's the right thing to do. But, Donald Trump was found liable of sexually abusing a woman. And then 8 months later, a separate jury found him guilty of liable for defamation of her. And then 10 months after that, he was still elected. Christine Blasey Ford gave, I thought, compelling testimony against Brett Kavanaugh about what she said she was raped. He was still confirmed by Republicans in the Senate. We are just on two different ball fields when it comes to cases like this, situations like this, and politics.